Hello, everybody. Today we welcome back Jessica Vitalis. We last had Jessica on our show almost 2 years ago. It doesn't even feel that long, but yet it kind of does. Feels like it's been a while. We are so excited to have her back because she has a new book and we can't wait to help her celebrate. So, Jessica is a talented middle grade author. Her previous books include The Wolf's Curse, The Rabbit's Gift, and now Coyote Queen. Yay! Hi, Jessica.
Hi there. Thank you so much for having me this morning. I'm so happy to be here chatting with you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, can you describe your newest release, Coyote Queen, in 5 words?
Oh my gosh, that is such a challenge. I think that I'm going to actually steal Kirkus's review because they gave the book a starred review and they actually described it in 4 words that I thought were so perfect. They called it rich, strange, and winningly intense. So I think that kind of perfectly sums up the book, although I would also add maybe hopeful onto it.
Oh, yeah,
That's
that's a
amazing.
really, and congratulations on the Kirkus
Yeah,
Mhm.
review. That's
thank you.
awesome.
Mhm.
And so many of us know educator Colby Sharp, and he quoted as saying, "So many of our kids are going to feel seen in this book. I cannot recommend it highly enough. It is phenomenal. One of the best books of the year, one of the most important books you will read this year." Oh my goodness. So, who do you hope will see themselves in your book? And wow, all of these rave reviews.
Coyote Queen has had a really good couple of weeks. It's been really fun, and I really appreciated that shout out from Colby. In terms of who I hope sees themselves in the book, I think it's really readers who are struggling behind closed doors. So, readers who are dealing with abuse, domestic violence, but also issues like housing insecurity, food insecurity, and also bullying. I kind of tackle all of those things in Coyote Queen. And I really hope that Fudd's story shows readers that they aren't alone and there is hope and even help available.
Incredible.
Yeah, I'm really excited to read it. And going kind of off of that, your book has sounds like some pretty tough topics.
Mhm.
And uh but middle school kids are able to read that. But how do you find the balance to with the tough stuff with the lighter so the younger audience doesn't feel too weighed down?
Yeah, that's really important. And that was definitely something that I struggled with writing the book. It turned out that the balance happened almost accidentally. I was writing a scene very early on where my main character, Fudd, was sitting outside of her trailer. She lives in a really isolated setting in rural Wyoming, and she didn't want to be inside the trailer with her abusive stepfather. So she was sitting outside, just kind of poking around, doing what kids do when they, have to be outside and there's no technology available. And I remember very distinctly this feeling in my mind where a U-Haul pulled up. There was one other sort of abandoned trailer next to them, and a U-Haul pulled up to that trailer. And as I was typing the story, I was like, oh, that's super interesting. I wonder who is in that U-Haul. And the door opened and this girl popped out, and her name turned out to be Lee. And she really just showed up on the page as this kind of fully formed character. And she was just so full of light and joy and energy that I just knew right away that she was the perfect balance to bring that lightness to the story that it really needed. So that was just a really fun experience, having a character literally just drive themselves onto the pages of the story.
I love that. I just love it when authors say things like that. Like it feels so magical
It
in
does.
Yeah.
writing.
Yeah. It's fun when it happens too. It doesn't happen all the
Yeah.
time. So when it does, it's like, wow, inspiration.
Yeah, that's really cool. So why do you feel, and we're in a weird world with books being banned or just challenged and not put on shelves because they're too tough, but why are books with tough topics important for young readers?
Boy, it is so important that kids see themselves in books in so many different ways. Speaking to domestic violence and abuse specifically, I just feel like kids in that situation, and I speak from personal experience, you feel really, really alone. You feel really, really isolated. And there's this weird kind of bifurcation that happens where, on one hand, you desperately want to be seen and heard. And on the other hand, you are really worried that people are going to find out what's going on behind closed doors, and you feel really embarrassed. And so it just is this feeling of stigma and isolation and being alone. And through the power of books, you can see that you're not, in fact, alone, that other people are going through this experience. And I think it also really helps young readers find the words to talk about what they're experiencing, because sometimes when you're younger, you don't have any context for this sort of thing. So for so many reasons, it's really, really important that readers have access to these books. And even for readers who aren't going through these difficult things, it helps build empathy. It shows you what is going on behind closed doors in some situations. And I always have the hope that maybe it'll help those kids who lived more privileged lives to maybe get involved or just reach out a helping hand in some important way.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
your previous books had beautiful magical elements. Does Coyote Queen also have some of these magical elements?
It does. This kind of goes back to the question you asked a few minutes ago about the lightness in the story and how to bring some lightness in the story, because I was working on this story and it was feeling pretty dark and pretty heavy, and I was searching for a way to add some lightness. And it all of a sudden occurred to me that I could use the coyotes that surrounded this trailer, because again, it's set in Wyoming, which is where I spent a portion of my childhood. And a big part of my experience as a kid was lying in bed at night and listening to the coyotes howl. And in fact, at one point we had to actually leave at that time we were living in a cabin, but we had to leave the cabin to use the bathroom. And I was too scared to do that at night because of these coyotes. And so that was just a salient memory in my mind as I was writing. And I realized that it would be really interesting to add sort of a magical twist to the story that would bring some lightness to it. So in the course of this story, Fudd starts to notice that she has this really strange connection to the pack of coyotes, and she starts to notice changes to her body. So she goes colorblind and she develops a better sense of smell. And one of the things that she does in the story is enter a beauty pageant, because she's really desperate to earn the prize money that she and her mother would need to escape this situation, even though she is not a pageant person at all. But toward the end of the book, she has to figure out how in the world she's going to win a beauty pageant, even though she has grown a coyote tail. So it's mostly a contemporary realistic story, but there is just that little twist of magic that adds some levity and fun, but also it's a really important metaphor for her intense desire to escape. So there's a lot of levels there that readers can unpack, but also if they're just looking for some fun magic, that's there too.
I love that. I love that. That
I
is so
know.
cool. So maybe, oh,
Go ahead.
maybe it's a good book for teachers to use to kind of unpack with the kids.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so many themes to explore, the stuff I already talked about, but also friendship, the power of community. There's stuff involving body image and the way that girls are expected to present in society, and how hard that can be if you are somebody who has limited resources to wear the right clothes and have the right makeup. And yeah, there are just so many things that could be unpacked in the classroom with this book for sure.
Very cool.
Yeah, your first two books took place in the same world.
Mhm.
What made you kind of feel like you wanted to step out of that world and write a story in a new one?
So this book is actually a twist on the very first book that I ever wrote. Way back when I started writing, I decided to write a memoir, and that's what drew me to writing originally, because I did have this really difficult childhood that we moved a lot. I moved almost 24 times before fourth grade, and
Wow.
so my life was transient, and we were poor, and we were always hungry, and I had an adult in my life who did not treat me like kids should be treated. So when I got older, I really wanted to explore that and unpack that, and I started to write a memoir, and I realized that memoirs are really, really hard to write, because life does not unfold in a neat narrative arc, and also it takes a lot of self-awareness and introspection in order to really handle these topics honestly. And so, decades ago when I started on this journey, I was not there, and I set it aside and I started writing fiction and got some fiction books published. But this idea of coming back to shining a light on some of the harder things that kids go through just would not let me go. And so that's when I decided to fictionalize my story, but still center it on some of the difficult things that I experienced as a kid.
And it's really spectacular how sometimes writing too, and this is for teachers, librarians, students, anybody out there that likes to write or may want to try writing as a form of therapy. I've heard this a lot. Do you feel like it kind of helped you a little bit through writing this story?
I think what really helped was starting to write this story and realizing that I wasn't ready to write this story. And that was part of the impetus for going to therapy and doing some of the really hard emotional work that I needed to do in order to be able to access the emotions to get me ready to write this story, if that makes sense. So by the time I wrote this story, I felt like a lot of the healing that needed to take place had already been done. And that's what enabled me to write this story.
Thank you.
All right, so switching gears a little bit, do you have a writing activity that, or some kind of brainstorming or something that teachers could use with their students?
Sure. One of my favorite activities to do deals with point of view and sort of character and emotion and setting details, because I feel like that's something that students struggle with, and even adult writers struggle with, just how to get the character on the page in a really compelling way. And that kind of comes down to voice. So one of the exercises that I think can be really helpful is if you place yourself in front of a classroom. Just envision that in your head, that you're standing in front of a classroom, or maybe you're actually in a classroom now watching this, and pretend that you're a teacher. So put on a pair of glasses that are teacher glasses, and how you see that classroom is through a teacher's eyes. So you're going to think about particularly emotionally how the teacher is feeling. And so make a list and brainstorm not just what the teacher sees, but how she feels about what she sees throughout the classroom. And just take a few minutes, and it doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to be pretty writing, but just write down setting details, what the teacher would notice. And then when you're done with that, set it aside, take off your teacher glasses, picture yourself in that very same classroom, but this time put on a different set of glasses. So the glasses that I like to use in this example are pirate glasses. Put on your pirate glasses and imagine that you're a pirate standing in front of that classroom and how you might be feeling, and just jot down how you notice the room and experience the room differently based on your experience of being a pirate. And I think going through that exercise of experiencing your environment through different lenses really starts to help you understand how to bring different voices to the page, and how what perspective you're writing in really impacts what you see and how you feel about all the different things around you.
That's
I
fun.
love that. Yeah, that's
It's
a lot
fun
of fun.
to do, and kids really enjoy it too. That's a really fun exercise to do in the classroom.
I'm doing
Yeah.
that. There we go. Okay, so
I like
for old time's sake, I guess we're gonna stack some books on our head. I shouldn't have worn this today. How many do you think you can get to stay on without falling, or staying on for 5 seconds?
5? I don't know. 5 ambitious? That might be too ambitious. Okay, I'm going to give it a try. Start with Coyote Queen.
So in our last time that we had Jessica here with Yvette Clark, we did this similar challenge. So that's why we're
Do
doing
we
it
remember
again.
how many did she stack up the first time?
Oh, you're doing great.
5 might have been really ambitious, because 3
I
is
feel like
really hard. Oh, okay. I have Megan Freeman's Alone here, one of my favorite books.
oh, mine
That's
too.
okay. That's all right.
Yeah, you can hold them and then let go for.
Okay, I'm going to go for one more.
Yep.
Gilded Girls.
Yes.
Love that story.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Right.
I'm at my limit here.
1,
2, 3, 4.
5. It was 5. It was totally
count
5
it.
seconds.
Close.
Yes. That was amazing. You had some big books there too.
Yeah.
These are some hefty titles. So
So
Yes.
you have some amazing books there, but what have you been reading lately?
one of the books that I just finished reading a couple of weeks ago, but it's really sticking with me, is Tagging Freedom by Rhonda Rumani. It's a book about Syria and the war over there, and it's a dual point of view. So it's about a boy who is in Syria and he's sent to the US to live with relatives for his own safety, but he is also living with his cousin. That's the other point of view. And so he's dealing with all of the trauma of wanting to be at home and making a difference. And she is also feeling like she lives in this community where she doesn't necessarily have a voice and can't make a difference. And it's just really powerful and compelling. And I think sometimes with dual points of view, you feel like you connect more to one voice than the other. And in this one, I felt like I loved both of these voices, and it was just a complete page turner. So definitely recommend Tagging Freedom.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'll add it to my list. Sorry, Kat. And finally, the last thing is, we're nearing the end of 2023. What is some advice you would like to give our viewers as they step into the new year?
I would say one of the things that I always tell people, if you're an aspiring writer, is to focus on what you're not good at, because it can be really easy to stick with what is really fun and what comes naturally. But if you really want to level up your writing, I think it's really important to dig into your weaknesses and really try to address those weaknesses. So that's my advice, is focus on the weaknesses and try to even things out a little bit so that your writing is more well-rounded, I would say.
It's
Great
hard,
advice.
but that's good.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. I love that.
All right. Well, yeah. Let me go ahead and say a quick spiel here to all of our readers. We hope you enjoyed our show and are inspired to pick up some new and amazing books. Remember that you can support Jessica and her new book, Coyote Queen, in a variety of ways. You can order from your favorite indie and post your review. You can add to your Goodreads list. You can request a copy at your local library. And please share this interview on socials to help spread the word. Thank you so much, everyone. And Jessica, thank you for being here. We had so much fun.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes.
Take care.